Next question goes to William Easterly.
Okay, well, this question is partly based on my experience at the World Bank, where I spent part of my career and found it a not very effective bureaucracy to resolve the world's problems. I want to read a couple of quotes. The first goes, "The international system is ill-equipped to provide aid because of a shortage of effective institutional arrangements, and above all, resolve to translate commitments into action." And the second quote is, "Our foreign aid system is broken." So it sounds like these quotes would be from this side of the table, but actually the first quote is from you, John, from the report Investing in Development, and the second quote is from you, Gayle, from your testimony to Congress. So it seems like you kind of agree that our foreign aid system is broken and is not working.
So I'd like to actually just read a quote. It says, "Foreign aid likely contributed to some notable successes on a global scale, such as dramatic improvement in health and education indicators in poor countries. Life expectancy has risen from 48 years to 68 years. 40 years ago, 131 out of every 1,000 babies born in poor countries died before reaching their first birthday. Today, 36 out of every 1,000 babies die. Routine children immunization combined with measles vaccinations in 7 southern African nations starting in 1996 virtually eliminated measles in those countries by 2000. Donors collaborated on a program to wipe out river blindness in West Africa starting in 1974, virtually halting the transmission of the disease. 18 million children in 20-country area of the program have been kept safe from river blindness since the program began." Pause. "Let's put the focus back where it belongs. Get the poorest people in the world such obvious goods as the vaccines, the antibiotics, the food supplements, the improved seeds, the fertilizer, the roads, the boreholes, the water pipes, the textbooks, and the nurses. This is not making the poor dependent on handouts. It is giving the poorest people the health, nutrition, education, and other inputs that raise the payoff to their own efforts to better their own lives." That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what these success stories are doing, and I congratulate Professor Easterly for writing that in his recent book, White Man's Burden.
And I did write the line and testify before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that our foreign aid system is broken. And it is absolutely broken. But that's not what we're here to debate. If the question before us is the U.S. government foreign aid system broken, you would have unanimous agreement this would be a very short debate and we would be now drinking. What we're debating is whether the aid that comes out of that system is doing more harm than good to Africa. I don't believe that it is. I think it could do a lot more good. I think it could do better. I think it could be more efficient, both in the eyes of American taxpayers and, importantly, as I think all of us agree, the Africans whose lives it is intended to change. But on the question of the aid system, absolutely it's broken.
But
aid itself...
You are arguing that a broken system still does more good than harm.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes, because if you look at what has been achieved, and I refer not only to the kinds of things that John talked about, but if you look at things like microfinance, like a commodity exchange, like the provision of wireless services, those things matter in people's lives, and I believe that that is doing good. Could it do better? Absolutely.
C. Payne Lucas, you get the next question.
Well, I'd like to ask my friend George, all these corrupt governments in Africa, first I'd like to know, is there any government in Africa that's not corrupt? Second, I would like to ask, if we end the aid, what should the U.S. should do? Should we not just give them anything? Just let them fiend for themselves and just restrict our whole effort to trade? So what is your answer to the problem? And by the way, I'm surprised at the number of villages that when do you work? You travel to these villages all the time in a continent that got 800 million people in it. And you tell stories that after 8 years of working in the Peace Corps and seeing Peace Corps volunteers in the bush talk about what they've been able to accomplish in working with Africans is phenomenal. So my question is, what would you do with we end all this aid so the corrupt politicians can't steal our money anymore? What would you put in its place? And especially in those countries that don't have any natural resources, don't have any infrastructure, and who are barely living on $100 a year.
Well, first of all, corruption is not an issue that the U.S. should fight. It's Africans who have to fight that battle themselves, okay? And number one, if you want to fight corruption, there are three basic institutions that you need. The first one, you need to have a free and independent media to expose it. That's how you solve the problem. That's the first thing that you do, expose the problem. The second is to have an aggressive attorney general to prosecute the corrupt. The third institution that you need is an independent judiciary to enforce the rule of law. We don't have many of these institutions in Africa, and that's why I told you, I said that the 6 basic institutions that you need, an independent judiciary, an independent media, an independent free media, are some of the institutions that we need to fight these battles ourselves. Now, I'm not saying that, corruption, all African governments are corrupt. There are some which are honest, okay? The government of Botswana, for example, it's a very transparent government which is doing very well. There are also some African countries which have made progress in stemming this tide of corruption, but that's not the issue. Look, sometimes American experts focus on the small success stories and ignore the larger picture. Okay, the World Bank has been, been adept at this, pointing out to economic success stories in Africa, ignoring the larger pictures like, the Congo, Somalia, Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria, countries which have collapsed. Now, let me also, you asked me a question, what would I do instead of foreign aid? I have indicated that the aid resources Africa desperately needs can be found in Africa. I coined the expression African solutions for African problems. We're not going to go to America. We're not going to go to China. We're not going to go to France. We're not going to go to Britain and beg because this devalues our pride and dignity. And this is why I said that the solutions to Africa's problems lie in Africa itself.
George Ayittey, you get to ask a question of the other side.
All right. The question that I'd like to ask is this, and to the other side is this. We have heard about a lot of humanitarian talk. Now, let me put this directly to you, Mr. C. Payne Lucas, since you've been involved in Africa. Whom exactly do you want to help in Africa? The African governments or the African people? Now, there's a distinction between these two. Most Americans think that the best way of helping the African people is by handing money over to their corrupt and incompetent governments. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I think we ought to help the African people. That's why we have hundreds and hundreds of NGOs who are doing programs all over Africa for which the government never touches one dime of the money. That's who we want to help. We want to help the people. And those governments who want some help about how to create good governance and a free press and the rule of law, we stand ready to help them too. But you got to remember, a lot of aid to Africa never goes near the government bureaucracy. You got to remember that. That's an important piece of the work.